Welcome to Everything But the Tip, the podcast that bucks the trend of the mainstream golf content being churned out by the masses. Presented by the co-founders of Smart Golf and Fitness, we're on a mission to guide golfers towards genuine improvement. No swing tips, no shortcuts, we're anti-instant gratification. Join us as we navigate the complexities of the game, offering insights on how to truly excel in golf by embracing the challenges and breaking free from the usual quick fix mentality. All right, welcome golf enthusiasts and fitness aficionados to a brand new episode of Everything But the Tip. My co-host, Tommy, and I are very excited for what should be a very enlightening conversation on a concept that has been around for a while now, but finally getting the notoriety it deserves: muscle activation technique. We are honored to have one of our very own Smart Golf and Fitness team members joining us today, Bill Busch, a.k.a. Flex. A nickname you could only appreciate if you saw this man without his shirt on, which he will gladly take off for you. Just go look at his social media.
I took that all out.
No, you didn't. Bill, though, he's a 30-year veteran in the fitness industry. He's one of the top M.A.T. specialists in the world, achieving the highest level of certification. We'll find out what that means here shortly. But Bill has brought us his unique expertise to the Smart Golf and Fitness team, and he's here to share his wealth of knowledge with us. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Bill Busch, a.k.a. Flex.
Okay.
I think that's enough.
Holy cow.
The crowd goes wild.
They go wild, you know?
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Tommy.
Bill, I think to kick things off, it probably makes sense for you to give us and our listeners just a little bit of background, and you can segue that into how you eventually led to M.A.T, and then maybe just give a simple introduction to what that is.
Easy peasy. Let's see. I've been around probably way too long in this industry, but 1985 is when I got started. Long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
A year before I was born.
Yes. I was alive.
I've been just a education junkie ever since I got started in this industry. Got my bachelor's in nutrition and science, started personal training. I thought I was going to become a dietitian, but training really just stuck with me. And then I went and got every certification there was out there. You name it, I was going after it.
Just a pile of alphabet soup after that, Billy Busch?
Pile of alphabet soup. And I was always curious about testing and verifying what I was doing, because I'd trained people, fast forward 15 years of training people, and I always wondered why some people, the programs worked out well, some people it didn't. And so testing became just again, a big curiosity. So then fast forward, I moved here to Chicago. I'm from Detroit.
Go Wings.
Go Wings. Go Lions. Yeah, go Lions, baby. And
Find a common thread for us all.
Yeah. I met a guy that had some of the same thought processes as I did, and he said, "You gotta go look at this muscle activation thing." And I'm like, I've been through every certification. What's this all about? And he's like, "Well, it's out in Denver." It's this guy, Greg Roscoff.
What year is this?
This is early 2000s.
You were born by then, right?
Yeah, you were born by then. How old were you in, say, 2001, 2002? Yeah. Anyway, so it's out in Denver, and I'm like, I can't go to Denver. I just got married. There's just no way that was going to happen. But lo and behold, there was what was called the Jumpstart class that came to Chicago. I'm like, great, I'll go to it, check it out. I walk in, I see some other trainers that I know. I start listening to this guy talk about, muscle activation, testing, and all this stuff, and I went, this is it. This is exactly what I've been wanting. I can't believe this. So I go through this jumpstart process. There's 3 different classes for that. And then they say, oh, well, if you know this stuff really good, you can go into the internship. Well, the internship is whatever, 9 months, 10 months long. That's out in Denver. I'm like, oh.
What was your full-time position at the time when you first got introduced to this?
I was actually a personal training like assistant director. I won't name the establishment, but
Big box?
it was a big box. Anyway, I had done everything up to that point.
Can you pinpoint, your first introduction to this? Because you had just said, I was there and I just knew it was it. Can you pinpoint what exactly transpired or unfolded in that first introduction to where it caused that reaction?
It was the testing. It was looking at the body and saying, this muscle's off. This is what you're going to do to turn it on. These are the exercises that are going to follow. So I never had to guess again. It was all laid out for me. 276 muscles later. It's a lot of stuff to study, but I wanted to do it. Anyways, I go through this whole thing where it's, I'm like, oh, how am I going to get out to Denver? And lo and behold, they hold the first satellite internship here in Chicago. I'm like, great. And at the big box that I worked at. Unbelievable.
Stars are aligning.
Stars are aligning. Great. Go through the internship. I love it. I met incredible people, same like-minded people. They saw that just regular personal training really wasn't where it was at. There was more to it.
Can you recall how many individuals were doing the internship at the time?
There was a good 40 of us, maybe.
This is nationwide?
That was, so they did internships in whatever 9-month blocks, so they'd have 30, 40, maybe 50 people in a class. So I go through that internship. I love it so much, I apply to be an assistant instructor. I don't get it, but I go through another internship because I loved it so much. Finally get the assistant instructor job. So basically, I went through the class 3 times within a couple of years. Then I start going to what Greg calls mastery classes. Those are out in Denver. So I do start traveling out to Denver finally, go through all those classes. And then eventually, Greg had been making such great strides in testing and the methodology. He came up with this whole muscle activation RX, which is prescriptive rules, which is what you guys have experienced. That's an invite-only class. I get invited. I'm just, high on life. I'm like, this is incredible. Go through that class, and here I am today. I haven't stopped. 2003 was my first jumpstart class. 20 years later.
20 classes later?
Yeah, at least.
Okay.
Yeah, it's never ending, and that's the one cool thing I love about it is that it's just nonstop education. I go out every year to get recertified and to really hone my skills. And Greg, the one thing I love about it is that Greg Roskoff keeps us accountable. He makes sure that we're on top of our game. That man can look across the room and see that if you're doing something wrong, and it really is incredible.
All right, so talk to us. How does muscle activation technique work? I mean, you take the literal interpretation of that as you're trying to activate a muscle.
Right.
So how does a muscle get inhibited in the first place? How do you know that? So can you share just how does it work?
So the simple answer is that what you're looking at in the body is range of motion evaluation. You're seeing, does a limb move a certain amount on one side? Does it move different on the other side? And then you're assessing, okay, if it's tight on this side and it looks really good on the other, there's probably muscles on this side that are inhibited. So then we go into muscle testing and go, okay, now I'm going to test these muscles to see which ones are possibly inhibited. And then from there, we're going to then use either a palpation technique, what's called a jump start or isometric technique, or now I use a electric stim technique.
What's a palpation technique? Obviously, I know, but I want.
So you've been poked before, so
I enjoy when Bill puts his fingers on me.
so basically what we're doing is palpating touching origin and insertion of a muscle. So every muscle has a point of origin, has a point of insertion. We're hitting those 2 points. Really what we're trying to bias is what's called a muscle spindle fiber. Without getting too technical, we want those muscle spindle fibers to fire. So you obviously have been palpated, you've been tested, you see that the muscle doesn't work, you palpate it or you e-stim it, and then magically it works.
So you're saying literally by pinpointing the right location in which you should touch, by poking it, that's all it could potentially take to wake up a muscle?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, so let's say hypothetically, we don't have to necessarily pick a particular muscle, but you find that it's inhibited, you poke it, you activate it. How do you know it's activated, and how long is it going to stay activated for?
You're retesting all the time. That's the other cool thing. So every time somebody gets on my table, they're being tested, no matter what. So let's say we work on your trunk rotation last week. You're going to come back this week. We're going to look at that again, see if it's working. We want to know.
And what does that look like for our listeners? Like, how do you determine if it's working or not?
Again, you're always testing. You're always looking at it's. People are like, does it get boring to you? And I'm like, no, because I always get to see whether or not something's working, and that's what I can play off of. So, because if you're good on the table, then I can get you off the table and actually train you.
Let me ask.
So,
give me an example of a test.
Yeah. So having been through it before, like I think just kind of drawing out there is like you're actually moving the body into a certain movement, and then you're having the person hold that position, and you apply a force to it to try and move them out of that position. So that's how you're testing. So initially, when you come on through, you take everybody through the various kind of patterns you talk about, right? So how many patterns are there?
43.
43 patterns. So you take everybody through pattern one. You kind of test all the muscles that are associated with that.
Correct.
If there's anything off throughout that process, you go ahead and palpate it, recheck it, make sure it's on, and then take it through some stress to see if
you're always
if that's going to
stressing
hold
it. That's
on.
the cool thing about
So that's kind of the cycle, right?
Yeah,
Talk
it's
a
the
little bit
cycle.
about the cycle.
It's on the table. You're obviously stressing it through the testing.
Let me do this. Let's use a specific example of a muscle that you're going to test, what that test looks like. It might be a simple leg raise of internal hip rotation, and walk us through that process.
So let's say hip flexion is off. We look at we lift the leg up. We want to see, can you hold that leg in that position? You're simply pushing up into my hand, and I'm applying a force. Doesn't meet if my force pushes you down, obviously it's off. It doesn't work. You palpate that muscle. Let's say it's a tensor fasciae lata. We palpate that musle. We bring it
tasty.
back. What's that? It does.
Sounds tasty.
It does. Yeah, I had those for lunch with my salad. We put it back into that position after the palpation, and we're going to retest it to see if it's on.
So hip flexors are an important thing to touch upon. We have a lot of our clients that spend a lot of time sitting throughout the course of the day. When you're sitting, your hip flexors are tight. When they stay in that tightened position, that shortened position, inherently they'll eventually stop working, or they'll turn themselves off because they don't have to do anything.
Yeah, I would say really if hip flexors are probably one of the biggest things I see off, especially on golfers. It's bizarre, but sitting seems to be like the new smoking anyway, because people come in and they they come in after travel or they come in after working a hard week, and I'm like, what'd you do all week? I didn't do anything, but I sat around. Okay, great. Hip flexion, it's off.
Well, I think a lot of people have, if they feel an area that's tight, so you're sitting for 8-10 hours a day, right? You're looking
Yeah.
at your screens, you're trading, you're doing whatever you're doing at your desk. You get up, those things have been shortened all day, so inherently they're going to feel tight.
Yeah,
so a lot
absolutely.
of people come in, they say, hey, my hip flexors feel tight. And we run into that with people with their hamstrings as well. My hamstrings are tight.
Yeah.
So the first, their first inclination for somebody that's, not very well educated, or just, if something's tight, you feel like, ooh, I got to stretch
Stretch it, yeah.
But is that,
No, that's an M.A.T process, because we want to see. So hamstrings are classic, right? A lot of times guys will come in, oh, my hamstrings are tight. I'm like, okay, great. Is it the hamstrings that are the problem, or are they tight for a specific reason? And usually it's for a specific reason. Hip flexion is off. Trunk flexion is off. I see that all the time. Just a basic sit and reach. It's like, okay, sit, reach. Oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. Or touch your toes. They're like, oh, I can't get down there. Well, hip flexors, trunk flexors, those guys are off. You put them on, all of a sudden the guy can touch his toes. Oh, my hamstrings opened up. Did we stretch you? No. It wasn't the hamstring that was the problem. It was a protective mechanism. So,
Sure, if the body feels weak, right, it
Correct.
tends to just kind of lock down because
Yeah.
it doesn't want you to move through a range of
Yeah,
motion
we
that
always
could
say
potentially put you at risk for injury.
Yeah, we always say it's the body tightens up. It's like walking on ice. You walk on ice and you're like, oh, everything tightens up. With M.A.T, we're trying to melt the ice. We're trying to get you to open up to be able to do things.
I think it's worth highlighting, when I first asked you about muscle activation technique, your first response went to range of motion, right? Which is interesting, because when you think of muscle activation technique, you think strength. And I think it's kind of cliche, but also understandable and common. But when people start to think, be tight in areas or lack range of motion, they immediately go to a flexibility issue. I need to stretch, which, from what I'm hearing you say and what we've learned, is like, be careful with that, because a lot of times it's a stability issue. It's a strength issue. There are muscles that aren't working accordingly. So your body has reacted in a manner that's kind of protective in a way.
Yeah.
But to avoid injury, but makes it feel like a flexibility issue. But you should really start looking deeper into
Why it's tight.
why, which more times than not sounds like it's a strength or muscle issue versus a lack of range of motion issue due to flexibility.
And we always talk about tolerance to these things as well. So they go and stretch. You get them back on the table, muscles are still off. I'm like, okay, it didn't work. It's not working for you. You're not stable here. Maybe it looks like you have more range of motion now, but just because you have more range of motion doesn't mean you're stable in the new motion. So.
I mean, if I had $1 for every time, a client came in and said, hey, I want a flexibility program, I just feel tight. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here, doing this podcast with you guys right now, But, that's kind of where our assessment comes into play, and where Bill has, been able to add a different level of expertise and add some different levels to it. The basis of our assessment process here is, TPI. TPI did a great job of providing a foundation and a common language that golf professionals, fitness professionals, medical professionals can work off of. It's a screening procedure, but their intention was for, healthcare professionals like myself, athletic trainers, M.A.T specialists, to take that to the next level. And we look at flexibility. We look at that part of the range of motion. That's only a part of it. We look at joint range of motion, the way the joints move.
Yep.
And then we look at, how can you move through that range of motion? What kind of stability do you have it? Because it's always about that mobility stability model. So
Everything we do in those in our assessment, we can ratchet up to another level. So something looks like it's not working, range of motion looks, shortened. Great. Now we have some new tools to be able to say, hey, it's because of this, through muscle testing, through M.A.T. That's what I love about working here, is that it's such a great team effort that that we can all kind of play off of each other. And, you guys are giving me the opportunity to do that. And I think that's one of the first things I said when I came here. Like, I want to be part of a team. I want a team that is open to new ideas, that wants to learn, because I want to learn too. And that's makes this place so much better. And I know I've said it a million times, but I'll say it again. These guys are the best, and I can say it because I've been around for 30 years plus. This is the best group of fitness professionals that I've ever worked with, because they're conscious of everything. They're always looking. They're not just, oh, here's an exercise and, looking at their phone or whatever trainers tend to do out there in those big box places. So.
Okay, so to kind of summarize, muscle activation technique, would it be fair to say it's more classified as assessing versus maybe your typical exercise? And that being said, depending on your answer, where does exercise fit in with M.A.T? So if a guy comes and sees you, they're seeing you weekly, you're putting them on the table, you're constantly checking to see if the right muscles are supposed to be activated.
You're turning them on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Turning them on.
And that's all they do. They're only here for your visits with you, and they're not doing. Would it work if they do nothing outside of that? And what is the complementary strategy, if you will, to go along with what they're doing with you?
Yeah. So we talk about muscle movement patterns. So every pattern, those 43 patterns, each of those patterns has an exercise that can go with it. Actually, every single muscle has an exercise that can go with it. So if you looked at 276 muscles that I look at, you can apply an exercise. The first and most easiest exercise to do is an isometric. So
would you say that there's a 101 introductory, probably most appropriate exercise for each muscle?
I would say that. Yeah, I would say that, because if take trunk rotation or hip flexion. Let's go back to hip flexion. If I can, if you can't lift your leg with it internally rotated, and you're constantly coming back and just getting palpated, well, why aren't you doing any follow-up exercises? That was always my thought process, especially when I got into this. I'm like, is all I'm going to be doing is palpating people or e-stimming people? Is that the only thing I'm going to be doing? So to me, the follow-up exercises have been the most important, because they can get down, work on that. And the strategy then is, hey, if I'm, let's say, working on trunk rotation and I'm sitting there going, hey, I rotate this way and then I rotate the other way, and oh man, that's really tight. They can assess themselves as well. So they can always come back in and go, hey, yeah, that trunk rotation thing's getting really hard for me. Okay, well, let's work on it again. Let's give you some new exercises to do. So there's more stuff to do. So there's always prescription of exercise to do. And then that builds on every week. So like in our first 12 weeks, seeing somebody, they can build through 10, 12, 15 patterns of exercises and get work done at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's worth highlighting, because I've been through the introductory process with you. You mentioned isometrics, and I'd like for you to go a little bit more in depth with that. And I will just say this. What I love about that, number one, just from like a lifestyle standpoint, his introductory isometrics are a 5-minute video.
Yeah.
And that's literally all you're required to do. And what I love about that, especially for the individuals out there that are not already in a regular habit of working out, when you think of working out, I mean, for me at least, it's daunting. Like it's our work is what I think of it. 45 minutes, you're working hard, you're sweating. Just the thought of it when you're not in the habit of doing so alone could be a little bit of an obstacle in getting your first step forward into forming that habit. So what I love, not only the fact that they work amazingly, but like it's 5 minutes. We all have 5 minutes. There's no excuse for that. And what's really cool is, because I've done it, you do it for 12 weeks for 5 minutes. And I've been in a situation where that's all I could really do, whether it was recovering from my hip replacement or other excuses that I have for not getting a full workout in. I felt progress. Right. And what I love that for the, call it average Joe is, me, no pun intended, is that you start with 5 minutes. It reminds me of that story. I think it was Atomic Habits. James Clear, he talks about a guy that wanted to lose a ton of weight. And rather than just saying, hey, go straight to the gym and get your hour workout in, he actually brought it back to, hey, just drive to the parking lot.
Yep.
Don't even go in.
Exactly.
Just stay in the parking lot, sit in your car, and just do that for me for 5 days straight.
Yep.
All right. Next step, go inside. Just go find one machine, do one workout, and leave. It sounds crazy,
Right.
but can you at least start with that process? And that's what I love so much about your isometrics, is that's no different than that example, is you get started there and then it opens the floodgates to grow from there.
Yeah. When I came up with the ISOs based off the M.A.T. process, I just thought, I just want to give them 5 minutes. That's it. If you can do 5 minutes, you know what they're going to probably come back next week and say? Well, that was easy. Great. You did it every day? Yeah. Great. Here's 7. And then all of a sudden there's 10 and 12. And all of a sudden they're doing 20 minutes a day. And they're going, wow, I feel amazing. I'm like, yep, I know. Because they just got in this cool little habit. And I know most of my guys and gals that do it every day, they're like, I can't not do this. I feel so much better when I'm doing them. Great. You don't have to kill yourself. You don't know how many guys that I just got a call from a family member. Said, I just started this workout program. I was sore for a week. I go, well, what the heck did you do? And I starts naming all these things. I'm like, why? You couldn't possibly think that you were going to feel good after you were doing that. He's like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, here, start with 5 minutes. Well, what's that going to do? Like, you're going to do it tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. And I'm going to give you another video and I'm going to give you more exercises to do. It's just this slow progress thing that people just don't get. It's this process. They want all this stuff right away. It just doesn't happen. I've never seen it happen, unless you're just some crazy athlete that can handle it all. But
I have a
even then,
question.
yeah.
Would you go as far as saying it's borderline crazy or unhealthy for the individual that, let's just say, for a year, 2 years, 3 years, he has no routine of working out?
Right.
But out of the blue, cold turkey, I'm going to the gym, I'm entering a strength training program. Say he's got a little guidance, or he doesn't. But he goes in there, he's doing a bunch of free weights, he's using the machines, he's doing bench press, doing God knows what. Would you say that, would he be better off not working out, okay, or jumping straight into that regimen? Just talk about that.
Well, first of all, there's no way, if you haven't done anything at all, that you're going to tolerate those forces without potentially getting hurt. So there's no way they're going to be able to handle all that. They're always going to get hurt because they can't even hold a plank. So just having an
and they might not get
awareness-
hurt immediately, right? It could happen
No.
over time because
Absolutely.
the reality
don't know.
is they're going to be compensating. They have to.
They have to. They have to. They haven't been able, they're like, oh, I think I'm going to do a bench press, pull down, I'm going to do a squat, I'm going to do this, that. Well, each one of those exercises has a bunch of muscles that make that exercise work. So what if you could find a way to evaluate all those muscles, make sure that they're all working, and then add your bench press in, if that's what you really want. But why not start small? But everybody thinks, oh, I got to do 30 minutes of cardio. Really? You haven't walked in however many years, why would you start with that? Why not start with walking around the block? It just doesn't make sense to me. Because ultimately, tolerance is the big thing. For me, it's like you see that all the time. You guys go on those golf trips. What happens? How many rounds of golf?
Lots.
Lots of rounds of golf. Now, if you haven't prepped for that, you know how you're going to feel. It's going to be awful. So my thought process was, let's get you ready for that. Let's slowly but surely get you there.
Yeah. I think it's worth mentioning a couple things. So an isometric exercise for our listeners that may not be, familiar with that is, taking the body through a movement but holding it. So it's a
Correct.
movement where there's not movement involved. You're either applying
Yeah.
a little force there or you're moving into a position and then you're holding that for some time. So, as much as Joe said, those were simple, yes. The 5-minute routine is very simple, but it's not easy. If you've held an isometric before for any amount of time, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, that's challenging. So when I started that first level one, when Bill got me on the table, I mean, I would break a little sweat after that because I'm holding those, I'm activating, I'm turning those muscles on, I'm trying to hold that position as best I can. So it's not easy. Secondly, our clients are used to working out one way. When they decide to go back into a workout regimen, they go back to what they know. And most oftentimes that was, high school sports, working out, for football, for basketball, for baseball, how they were taught were 3 reps of this. We're sitting around, and recovering between those things. They remember the weights that they used to move. So they're like, oh, I think I can still do that. But that's not necessarily the best. So we pride ourselves on trying to re-educate our clients on the proper way of working out. Unless you're still getting into bar fights and you're used to getting your ass kicked and pushing people off your chest, realistically, bench press isn't really a very useful exercise for anybody that's, of any age, and still not trying to make it to the NFL combine and stuff like that. But that's what we pride ourselves on is teaching them a little bit more efficient way because we talk about time. Teach them a little better way to make sure that they don't injure themselves. Correct. And then if they want to take on some of those, more advanced things, if they want to, run a half marathon, if they want to do an Ironman, if they want to, get into some Olympic type lifting because they've done that before and they want to build some of that strength back up, now they can do so safely because they've gone through an M.A.T evaluation process. They've gotten those muscles turned on. They've come through our assessment process. We do a lot of Olympic lifting with our clients. So a lot of times people come in and they're like, are we going to do some band work? We can do that. Yeah, those are all part of the process. But and here we pride ourselves on not giving out exercises. You have to earn exercises in here.
Exactly.
Everybody's going to go to Google and see, Bryson doing these cool exercises, developing power and speed and stuff like that. But realistically, we're going to do our due diligence and make sure that you can handle that before we put ourselves there. My background's in athletic training, as most of you know from our, one of our previous episodes. So athletic trainers, we try to do no more harm. We try to figure out what needs to be done to make sure that we can get our athletes back on the pitch, back on the court as quickly as possible by doing no further harm. We take that same process here. So
it works great. I never see us do anything.
Just to clarify, I was saying the time commitment of 5 minutes was easy, not
That's okay.
necessarily the exercises.
Right. No.
Yeah.
But I just an example I like to use is people automatically assume, an exercise, take for example a squat. What's it mostly designed to do? Well, it's designed to work your glutes, right? There are other obviously complementary muscles that I work with. But the point is,
back,
the point is if you jump straight into a squat and your glutes aren't working at all, right? Other muscles are going to have to overcompensate. That exercise might not be 100% designed to strengthen, right? So my point is that would be a nice little, I think, simple example of a compensation. Right. Maybe your quads are overworking per se, right? And you correct me if I'm wrong, but is a squat more glute-centric versus quad-centric, or are they perfectly equal as far as what that's attacking?
Well, we'd have to look at that under a microscope, but I would say it's more quad-centric, but to me, a squat is everything. If you're putting a barbell on your back, is that the squat you're talking about?
Sure. Deep squat.
Deep squat with a barbell on your back. There's a lot of stuff going on. You want to look at all those forces going through you.
All right, let me
start to look at the core.
Is there one muscle that's must be working in order before you even consider doing that exercise that you would prioritize more than others?
I wouldn't put that exercise out unless I knew all those muscles were working.
Got it. Fair.
But everybody squats every day, do they not?
Yeah.
I mean, if they don't, then I don't know what they're doing.
Right.
You've got to get down on the commode.
You do.
Maybe once or twice a day. Whether or not those muscles are working appropriately, that's our job to check out and stuff
exactly.
like that. But I've run into doctors before that told people they can't squat anymore because they've got bad knees or they got backs. I'm like, well, what kind of advice did he give you? Having to go to the bathroom.
Exactly.
So,
all right, let's talk about what athletes are using M.A.T.
Okay.
And then let's talk specifically. We are at the end of the day a golf podcast, golf and fitness. Let's talk about how M.A.T. Let's talk about a relatable experience or why a golfer should strongly consider M.A.T. So, what athletes are using it? Why should a golfer strongly consider it?
Well, we know Bryson DeChambeau is the big M.A.T. guy.
Is he?
Yep. And Wyndham Clark, another young golfer. Both Major winner, yeah. Both Bryson and he won the U.S. Open.
And Wyndham's playing in the Ryder Cup coming up this weekend, so that's exciting.
That is exciting.
Bryson should be.
Should be, but that's another podcast, right?
You shot another low round at Rich Harvest last week for the Live Tour to
It's
close
2 in a
out a
row.
victory. Yeah.
Mhm.
58, 63. Huh? That's good.
We have people doing M.A.T. in every major sport right now. So Greg Roscoff, the developer of muscle activation, is the M.A.T. specialist for the Denver Broncos.
Don't say the Broncos.
Yeah, sorry.
Especially after last
Sorry.
week.
But he is also the M.A.T. specialist for the San Francisco 49ers. So
Better.
yeah,
better
a
example.
little bit better.
Safe.
Yeah,
Sorry,
safer.
Ross.
Yeah. We're in Major League Baseball. We're in the NBA. We're in the NHL. Probably name the sport right now. There's an M.A.T. specialist helping out somewhere. So
What took so long for like M.A.T. to come to the forefront and stuff? So like,
that's a good question. I think what I believe is that, and forgive me, Greg, but Greg Roscoff is so picky about all of his specialists and how good we are that he has taken his sweet time getting us certified. This is not a mass certification. This is not something you do over a weekend. And I love that about that. So I think slowly but surely you're like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. It's taken me 20 years of doing this to finally be in a place that you guys appreciate it and see.
I think there's a difference between certification and education.
Yes,
right?
Big time. And so that's really the reason I think why it's not out there. Greg's all about getting us better. He's not about broadcasting, M.A.T's, marketing it that way. He's all about the education. So will it be bigger in another 10 years? Absolutely. There's more and more specialists. All my, good friends that are specialists are constantly, looking to get better. We don't think we're great yet. There was Greg actually had a great analogy at our last conference. He said if he's a +8, right? If you're +8 as a pro golfer, pretty damn good, right? Well, that's Greg. Well, there might be a bunch of us that are like +2s, maybe +4s at the most. But then a lot of guys are
20s and 30s?
Yeah.
Handicappers?
Right. So he's trying to get us to,
Everybody's trying to get to scratch at least?
yeah, at least. So, you want to be better and better, obviously. So I think his tenacity of just getting us on board with testing and being as thorough as we need to be, there's no other education program like it.
Have you ran into any obstacles, or can you discuss some hesitations on why individuals haven't decided to run with M.A.T?
Many obstacles. Yeah, it's a really detailed process. It's like, are you talking about clients or are you talking about
what are the
fitness
obstacles for an
professionals?
M.A.T specialist to grow his book? Like, why isn't the phone ringing, or why is it? For me, I didn't know anything about it
Right.
until you. So I can think of obstacles right off the top of my head. It's not widely known. It's not marketed. It's not common in discussion in the gyms right now. Why is that?
It's a good question. I really think it's the details. People don't want to go through the details. You get on the table and you're like, you're going to do what? I'm going to test this muscle. Okay. Now you're going to do what? I'm going to palpate this muscle. Okay. Are we done? When do I get to exercise? Because people just want to exercise right away, right? We're like, you're not ready for it. I always say, we kind of hit on this, you have to earn the right to get off the table. Earn the right. If you're solid on the table through, let's say, 10 patterns of testing, and I'm like, great, let's go train now. Or, but people don't want to do that. So again, people are like, I just want to exercise. Isn't exercise good for me? Well, I don't know until I see what's working on you.
What's the longest someone has been on the table going through your M.A.T assessment and palpating and stim, etc.? And what's the shortest someone has been on the table before you're like, all right, it's time to go in the gym?
Longest is I've had people that have been around for years that come in, and it's M.A.T only.
So you've had guys, clients, for a couple years.
Years.
That you have yet to take in the gym.
I will go through isometrics with them, but they can't handle anything else. As soon as I apply forces their body can't handle.
What's an individual like that look like? What are some of the characteristics they possess?
They're tight all over.
Are they typically older?
Nope.
Not necessarily?
Not necessarily. That's what's really interesting. That I've seen a wide range of people from 20s, 30s that are still on the table.
Sedentary lifestyle or
Sedentary lifestyle.
Okay.
And so they come in, they're like, this doesn't feel right, that doesn't feel right. There's something that's always off, it doesn't feel right for them.
So what I'm hearing you say...
M.A.T is their way of getting from this week to next to feel better. So they still, let's say, exercise, they walk, they do things, but really M.A.T gets them further and further and further.
But what if, I mean, you also take a look at, don't you, what they're doing from an exercise standpoint to see whether that's turning them up? I mean, because you get people that, runners, per se. I always say that there's a couple of different types of marathoners, right? There's the really, really skinny ones, and then there's the ones that look like they shouldn't be running a marathon, but those people run often. Mm-hmm. They run the same amount. They run at the same speed. Yep. They usually don't do any resistance training. So the body is a storage mechanism. It's a survival mechanism. When you go out for that run, it doesn't know whether you're going to be going for 3 miles, 5 miles. So if you do the same stuff over and over, eventually the body's just like it's going to shut down, and you're just abusing that same pattern. So whether you had muscles that weren't on before, they're going to continue to be off because they haven't been needed to be on for however many years you've been running your 5 miles 4 times a week, and and hitting a half marathon every now and then. And then also you haven't done any resistance training, so the body again doesn't know if we're going for 13 or 5, so it just starts to store, and you're not going to look like an athlete per se.
Correct. What somebody looks like, and again, their tolerance to exercise can be different, but yeah, for the most part, you're going to see that.
So what I'm kind of hearing you say is there are a lot of people working out in the gym, doing their own thing, which to you is kind of baffling. Like that's not where they should be. And what would you say to the guy that's been working out for years, does a strength training regimen, he's got a great physique, he would describe how he feels is healthy, started, never did M.A.T. Like, what would you say to that guy to say, hey man, I didn't need that. I've been doing strength training and look at my body and I feel great.
So are we looking at his body, or he has no aches, no pains, no tightness anywhere? He's a perfect specimen.
Does that person exist?
I don't think he does. Athletes are, classic. Obviously, they overtrain. So, one thing I like to talk about is, what shuts down muscles? Stress, trauma, overuse. Well, have any of those? You have to. Everybody does. And stress comes in different forms, emotional, chemical. So those, and obviously physical, and then, overtraining is there. So trauma is an easy one, but tell me there's somebody out there that exists that has none of those things happening. So I'd say, great, you feel great. Let's get on the table, see how great you are. And then all of a sudden I go to test transverse abdominis and it doesn't work. And he goes, what the heck? I've been doing abs forever. Well, it's not working. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, that's where I think it goes back to people doing what they're comfortable with, what they're good at. We see that a lot in the golf, when people go to the driving range by themselves and they haven't been, instructed on proper, drills and things like that. They're going to work on the stuff that they like. They kind of go through the bag, but they're going to gravitate towards the stuff that they like. This particular individual in the gym has been doing this workout for a while because he, it worked well for him at some point, but then again, the body adapts. So he's really not exposing it to anything extra. But as soon as that guy goes out and, is playing in a turkey bowl and hasn't done any lateral movement, stuff like that, now it's, now it's an ACL potentially, or man, I was so sore after I did that, because it's outside of what his body's normally naturally accustomed to. The human
Yeah.
body's amazing mechanism. It's going to adapt to what it does.
Exactly.
And then it's going to, again, survival. It's just like, okay, I can manage this. So.
I get that all the time with clients. They're going great, everything's feeling great, and then they go, yeah, I was trying my buddy's basketball fitness camp. Like, you're doing what? Yeah, I think I tweaked something. I'm like, of course you did, because you didn't tell me we were preparing you for that. I've been preparing you for golf. I've been preparing you for all these other things. You didn't tell me you were going to start basketball camp.
Or you're not going to start raking some leaves. It's going to be leaf
Well,
raking
yeah, that's
season
classic.
and stuff like that, or,
That's
or
classic.
yard work stuff like
It's
that.
always that
It's like-
overuse of people say they clean their house and they feel like crap. Like, okay, well, how often are you cleaning your,
My dad's a perfect example. It happens every year. He lays in his chair for most of his days, and then he gets motivated and he goes out and does intensive yard work
Right.
for, call it 6 hours, and then he can't move for 4 days.
Exactly. Everybody's like that. There's always people overdo it all the time. Like, well, you didn't prepare yourself for that. So why did you think you were going to be able to sit there for 6 hours and rake leaves?
So how do we take M.A.T. into the golf world? You mentioned Bryson, you mentioned Wyndham. How specifically have you been integrated into what we do here, and what would you talk to golfers why it's important for them?
Well, as you guys know, I got introduced to you guys through Kyle and through Todd. Todd came to me with horrible back, and I said, okay, listen, do everything I say to do. Let's go through this bunch of sessions to turn everything on, and let's get you back to swinging a golf club.
Which again started with the 5-minute isometrics,
Right.
which you have your videos. We've all gone through them. They are awesome. And then it turned into him ultimately doing was it 20 minutes?
Yeah, he's 20 minutes.
Yeah, and
he's always doing it.
Todd, I mean, it'd
And
be
he's
cool if he
still-
was on this podcast, because he'd flat
Yeah.
out say, I experienced back pain for my entire golfing career, and I have none today.
Right. So that's what I would say to any golfer. Like, tell me you have no aches and pains. There's nothing wrong with you. Why wouldn't you want to be part of a process that can help eliminate some of that stuff?
So are you telling that maybe part of the sales pitch to M.A.T. is that we can give you a body with no aches and pains? Does that exist? Is that a real?
That's
possible-
tough. That's tough. I mean, you're constantly going to break down. That's just life's going to beat you up.
So for moments in time,
one
you could
classic thing.
potentially experience that.
You can. I believe you can. I think I know when I get treated on a regular basis and I do my homework and I'm very detailed in my workouts, I can feel phenomenal. When I'm working, 12-hour days here, which I'm very thankful for, I start to feel, obviously, the aches and pains that anybody would feel. But to me, getting back to being evaluated and constantly looking at all the details, I think my best clients are the ones that are always looking at the details. Like, yeah, this doesn't feel right. That doesn't feel right. And so, at first when I started hearing that from clients, I was like, how are you figuring this out? Oh, well, they were actually doing the ISOs and going, yeah, this isn't the thing that you asked me to do. Doesn't feel the same as it did the first time we did it. Like, oh, okay, great. Sure enough, things are off. We have to retreat it. Great. They feel better. They're back to the ISOs. They're making forward progress. You're always going to have dips in the road, but you can come back and feel better.
So Todd was a solid success story
Solid.
on multiple levels.
Yes.
One, gifting you to us and bringing you
thank
our
you.
way, and him being able to resume his golf career and play as much golf that he would like to and his schedule allows. He's one of our fantastic coaches here at Smart Golf and Fitness. I look at myself as kind of a little bit of a success story, and then eventually things started to deteriorate. So that's where we had to look a little further. So
Right.
I also had hip replacement in April. I had been through a lot of different things, needling, PT, fascial stretch therapy, trying to do just about anything to try to feel better. But eventually the hip started to take over and, started to deteriorate. But initially when Bill and I started working together, 5-minute ISOs, 7-minute ISOs, I got a lot of those patterns on, and I was feeling good, and my body was functioning about as good as it could given what I had going on there.
Exactly.
But again, like you said, eventually it's going to break down. There's going to be stress that it's not going to be able to overcome. So that's when, we kind of decided it was time for me to go get an x-ray and see what was going on, and we were fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah,
at
exactly.
that
I
point.
see that. I've seen that a lot through my career as an M.A.T. specialist. People, you get them working, it feels great. I'm like, you know what? This is good. You're feeling good right now, but something's wrong. This is above my scope of practice. Let's go at least see a physical therapist, see somebody that can look at this, go get a picture taken of it. I had one client that had gotten hit by a car, and I'm working on her. She's feeling better, and I said, hey, listen, you got to go get a picture taken. I can't look at your knee and think that it's okay because I keep treating it. She's like, no, I'm good. This went on for a good 6 to 9 months. She finally went and got an MRI. Had no ACL. And the doctor's like, how are you walking? How's
All
this
my
possible?
muscles are turned on.
Well, she said to him, she goes, well, I got this guy, he's an M.A.T. specialist. He's been keeping me going, but he kept bugging me to go get an x-ray. Well, thank God. So she actually, I think, ended up getting a knee replacement because of it. But, there's just all this damage there. I'm like, okay, I made you feel good for a while, but, I can honestly say, yeah, something's not right here. If you keep coming back and it's wrong, then obviously.
So M.A.T. does not correct AC.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. But hey, what a great tool, though, is to be able to say, and I feel good about it, saying, no, this is above my scope of practice. This is not something I deal with. I deal with muscles. That's it. I'm not going to tell you have an ACL tear or whatever was going on with her, or your hip.
Yeah, I mean, I've resumed doing the 5 minutes. I do the 5 minutes before I play golf every single time religiously. I have my own proprietary blend that I've used on Wednesdays with a client of mine, but it was kind of the greatest hits of the things that I knew that my body needs. So, that's the thing is, you've got your videos, the level ones and things like that, but the stuff's interchangeable and can be applied differently. And I do that with clients as well. I've got a lot of guys that have shoulder issues, so I do a lot of the,
arm movements.
Arm movements and the external rotation at different angles and downward rotation and scapula and stuff like that. So that's what's great is it's adaptable, just like a lot of our programming is. It's individualized for the people based on what they need. So,
yeah, I love that aspect of it because a golf pro can tell me, here's what I see in this client. They can't do this, and that. And I'll go, well, yeah, of course not, because we've already assessed and we found that out. I'm like, I'm working on it. We're going to get them there. So you can be very specific on helping each of those aspects of the golf swing.
I think we're starting to see a shift with people's kind of understanding of, working out is not one size fits all. It's a custom approach, and there's no better way than figuring out what your custom approach is going to be by learning about where the function of your body currently stands. And what's really cool is we've got several different ways in which we can test and determine how your body does function and where you need to get started. I have to ask though, Jack or Bill. Well, you'll understand why I said that after I say the question. You're a pretty jacked guy, right? So I see you in the gym. I see you doing a whole myriad of different exercises, power, strength training, a lot of weight, right? So
and a lot of ISOs.
Yep, a lot of ISOs.
Never starts to work out without his ISOs.
Yeah.
So safe to determine that M.A.T. is not the only reason you look as strong as you do. But I do have to ask, how are you able to, how are you able to continue to practice M.A.T., if you will, for yourself? And what does that look like?
Well, Tommy hit it on the head. It's ISOs first. It's me determining what's not feeling right. So there's where ISOs come in. You go, okay, I'm going to rotate. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to feel, there.
Fumble.
Fumble. Man down. I'm going to see how each of these positions feels. To me, it's the constant details. Okay, everything feels great. Now I can go do whatever it is, whatever workout I thought I was going to do today. But if the ISOs don't feel good, I'm going to stick with those. I said I had one little break today. I sat on the floor and did like 90, 15-second ISOs, 30 minutes, just constantly looking at different aspects. And I felt great when I got done because I picked out some details that I didn't like how it felt. And so hopefully that set me up for the rest of the day, which it did. And here we are, and I feel great. And I know hopefully tomorrow I'll go through the same process, but I got a little bit bigger break tomorrow, so I'll push it a little bit harder.
Would you guys go as far as saying in today's day and age of just the fitness industry, we've talked about ISOs a lot today in relationship to, are ISOs one word, did they used to be talked about a lot more, and are they not talked about enough today?
Yeah,
what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think they're talked enough about. There are people out there doing them. They're, really classic, if anything. Charles Atlas, dynamic tension. That was the 50s or whatever time period that was. But again, they're not sexy at all. It's not as cool looking as whatever bench pressing or powerlifting or whatever. Luckily, through my maturity, I don't care about sexy anymore. I care about what feels good. So I'd rather be able to take a 50-pound dumbbell, do an exercise for my chest, and that be it. I don't need the 80s. I don't need the 100s or whatever. I can make that feel like 100 just by slowing down my reps, slowing down my tempo.
Yeah. So the place you're going to see ISOs the most is just kind of in the PT post-surgical environment. So those are the ones that are using it the most when a joint's been affected. It's been, there's been some trauma there. It's been repaired. And now you want to strengthen around it, but you don't want to provide a lot of movement there because you want to allow it to rest and recover. So that's where you're going to see ISOs the most. Tom House, is one of the guys that I learned ISOs through a lot. Yeah. World-renowned pitching coach, works with a lot of NFL quarterbacks, things like that, working on a lot of foundational fitness, you know. And the reason you don't see them a lot, like he said, they're not sexy, but two, they're hard. It's a lot easier to throw, a bunch of weight onto, a stack, and I'll rip out some, rope curls or some push downs because you can use some momentum, you can use some other parts of your body, but you try and hold a position like that for a bit. Yeah, no. That's not happening. Then move through that slow motion and then do it again. It's like that's really challenging. So
it's just funny because you can learn so much about that, right? It's like, okay, well, you've been injured, all right. So the first thing we're going to do is introduce some exercises that might fall under the classification of isometrics. Yet, I find it ironic that for the individual that hasn't worked out for years, he should almost be viewed. He's not injured per se, but there's a reason
he can't
that the
handle those
PTs
forces.
are starting with that.
Right.
So if you haven't been working out on a regular basis for X amount of time, which even then I know you have your issues with, but you should be starting off with something similar or in that classification is what I'm gathering here.
Absolutely.
Or seek out an expert and they can tell you what you need to do.
Exactly. That's why I have the table ready to go.
Well, this conversation's been awesome. Honestly, I have so much more questions I want to ask, but due to time,
part two.
Yeah. As we wrap up the conversation, can you share any, final insights or key takeaways about the significance of M.A.T that you'd want to share? And then maybe just give our listeners some insight on how they can find some more information about you and M.A.T itself. And
well, first of all, you can go to the Smart Golf website. And, you can find information about muscle activation there and me. Where I think muscle activation should be part of every fitness organization. It should be on every street corner, at every gas station. To me, it gives you that insight. So again, one of the things I love about this team here is that somebody can throw a client my way, another fitness coach can throw a client my way and go, hey, can you take a look at this guy? Yeah, absolutely. And then we can determine some things, work on them if I need to, or give that trainer some insight. So it's this constant back and forth. That to me is is the perfect storm, if you were. That you don't see that in any other place, because we want everybody to do really well here. I don't care if it's Tommy's client or Nico's client or whoever's client it is. We want that person to obviously be better. So we're all going to sit there, and we've done it in our fitness meetings. It's been so much fun sitting there going, what if this guy had this, and this? And we're all sitting there trying to help that one person get better with all these different viewpoints. So that to me is where M.A.T. should be part of every program. It's there to help people. It's there to help not just the clients, but the training staff, the golf staff in this case too, because obviously we want to make every golfer here better. So
We are everything but the tip. But do you have a tip for our listeners?
a tip? Oh, are you putting me on the spot here?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If they haven't tried M.A.T, should they try it out?
They should try it out.
Whoa.
Absolutely.
No, that's a good tip.
Yeah, that's a very good tip. You should do your isometrics every day. That's my tip.
And if you don't know what those are, come check them out.
Come
Bill will
check
give them
it
to
out.
you.
Yeah, exactly. Got to earn the right to get off my table first to do them.
All right, Bill. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation with you. Tommy, thanks per usual for your time and participating. I look forward to continuing the discussion in the near future, hopefully.
I think it was awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right, keep this.
Cheers.
A big thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Everything But the Tip podcast. Stay connected with us on all social media platforms by following @SmartGolfFitness. For additional episodes, updates, and exclusive content, check out our website at smartgolffitness.com. Don't forget to show some love, like, share, and subscribe to ensure you never miss out on the latest insights and engaging discussions. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, keep swinging and stay fit.